have been quite a few Paul Heyman guys in the last few decades in pro wrestling, but keeping relevancy in play, the only three names that we're going to mention here are the tippy-top ones. Yes, the top Paul Heyman guys and Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk, all maybe in that order. The main reason why those pairings worked out so well was because of their real-life friendships and relationships backstage that made it easy to project them as an on-screen duo. Yes, the wise man behind a conniving plan to execute for his in-ring superstar. Sure, we've had guys like Michael McGillicuddy or Cesaro claim the Paul Heyman Guy tag, but it never really worked out the same way for them. We're sure Paul Heyman, the wise man of wise men in pro wrestling, had some sort of relationship with them off-screen, but it didn't translate the same way as the others, and that wasn't either one of their faults. With Brock Lesnar, there's a factor of Heyman was with him in his early days in his career. With CM Punk, there was the whole thing where Paul Heyman vouched for him in WWE when others didn't, and was his biggest proponent and advocate behind the scenes. With Roman Reigns, they have a relationship dating back to when the Tribal Chief was just a baby who couldn't even speak but knew the language of pro wrestling. Not hard to see why or how so many important figures have had a connection with Paul Heyman, one of the most influential players in WWE and pro wrestling history. Three different but very personal circumstances brought them together. However, the unfortunate reality is the situations with Cesaro, Michael McGillicuddy, is that WWE made almost a lot of effort, really, to make those partnerships progress. So, who should be maybe the next Paul Heyman guy? Let's get into it. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. I'm Kevin. Let us know who you think it should be. We have an idea. We'll get to it in this video.
Just when you thought I was out, he pulled me back in.
So what about those Paul Heyman guys that really didn't, work out? In the case of Cesaro, the Swiss cyborg specifically, his alliance with Heyman was essentially used to hype up Brock Lesnar, who had just ended the Undertaker streak. Paul Heyman himself cited this as the reason for his partnership with Cesaro ending. But what if there was another guy that Paul Heyman is currently cultivating a relationship with backstage? Someone who we think is the best option to become the next Paul Heyman guy. This isn't anyone. This is someone who you truly know right away is special. This is Bron Breakker. And here's why WWE should turn him into the next Paul Heyman guy who gets the wise man stardust sprinkled upon him. Stand back. There's a new wrestling quiz coming through. Check out BrainBuster, the daily quiz that tests your WWE knowledge with winning streaks, stats, and more. It's time to see if you're up for the challenge. Bron Breakker has been wrecking through people and has been a champion in NXT, WWE's on-TV developmental territory, and it's clear that Bron Breakker from the Steiner wrestling family has a big future in the business. While there's nothing actually to confirm it, it's just a widespread speculative point about Bron Breakker being called Bron Breakker and not Braun Steiner, since he's the son of, Rick Steiner of the famous Steiner Brothers tag team. What's the deal there? Well, WWE apparently was doing this to distance themselves from the family name. And if you don't know why WWE would want to distance themselves from the Steiner Brothers, despite them being in the Hall of Fame, let's just say because questionable things have been said and done by his father and his uncle. We'll leave it at that. Either way, he has proven to be a dominant monster of a man when the bell rings, and a lot of people eye him as a future world champion. So what case does he have to become a Paul Heyman guy, though? In a recent interview on Getting Over, Breakker said that he was getting help and a bit of mentorship from the likes of very important, smart people in wrestling who are currently in WWE, like Paul Heyman, CM Punk, and even Roman Reigns. Well, obviously he hasn't rubbed shoulders with Roman Reigns too frequently just yet, at least as far as we know. He's likely crossed paths with Paul Heyman more than you would think. Heck, there was even a moment when John Cena appeared on WWE NXT last year when Breakker was still there, and Heyman introduced Bron Breakker on behalf of Roman Reigns. Heyman is so good that even he knows how to sell a handshake. One handshake was enough to make it seem like there's a partnership in gold waiting to be cashed in on in the future. His vision, Bron Breakker main eventing WrestleMania. As Braun made his exit from the room in that chance encounter, Paul Heyman slyly said to his phone, "Call Roman Reigns," almost as if he was setting things up for that future opportunity. This, in our opinion, was intentional, maybe even by design. A few months later, on WWE SmackDown, there was a very, very brief interaction backstage between Paul Heyman grinning ear to ear and shaking hands once again with Bron Breakker. Again, intentional, another big tease. And we're not saying that Bron Breakker has muscled his way into a confirmed 100% guaranteed spot as the next Paul Heyman Guy. But let's just put it this way. Forget the fact that Brock Lesnar is out of the picture for the foreseeable future. When Brock Lesnar returned in 2021, he didn't even need Paul Heyman by that point. But you must be wondering, what about the wise man's story with Roman Reigns? Paul Heyman being taken out by the new bloodline led by Solo Sikoa was a subtle way of WWE saying he's probably going to come back with a good guy, babyface, beefed up Roman Reigns. Just like CM Punk, Roman Reigns doesn't actually need Paul Heyman to speak on his behalf, but it certainly adds something to the presentation. But his presence as the wise man and their long-time relationship in real life adds to the story that is already being told. When Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns were the central feud heading into WrestleMania in 2022, Paul Heyman's loyalty was the integral part of the story. He adds a lot to it, even when you don't realize it on the surface. Yeah, try to think beyond just what's on the marquee, but what's on week-to-week TV. What if WWE decided to take the very rare route, having a breakup happen on good terms? Yes? An amicable split? Assuming Roman Reigns is indeed a babyface hero when he returns, and hotter than ever because fans have been anticipating that return, he isn't going to need anyone talking for him. Heck, as a good guy, Paul Heyman's presence by his side won't exactly be necessary. Breakups in wrestling are inevitable, and they're usually caused by one person turning on the other 99.99999% of the time anyway. But what if WWE did the APA-style breakup? They just had Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman end their relationship on a positive note without any drama. It would honestly be quite refreshing to see. A simple backstage segment where both Roman and Paul agree they've come to an end, and they know possibly they could achieve different things away from each other. Because it's true, Roman Reigns has achieved pretty much everything there is except winning Money in the Bank or becoming King of the Ring. But does his legacy getting affected by not winning those really matter? No, not that much. Would Paul Heyman need to be a part of it even if he did win them? Probably not. It could be a nice, wholesome, emotional parting of ways, with Roman Reigns being aware of exactly who Paul Heyman wants to take under his wing next, and wishing him the best of luck in their future endeavors. The good part about someone as talented as Paul Heyman is that even he can be slotted into the same role as long as he's able to walk and talk and do the Paul Heyman act and accentuate someone else in the process. When that split finally happens, then it would be the perfect time to introduce Bron Breakker as the next Paul Heyman Guy. Like Brock Lesnar a couple of decades ago, Bron Breakker's strengths are his physicality, his dominance, his athleticism, that charisma that feels larger than life but isn't really rolling into big-time Riz territory. Not his abilities on the microphone. Need a little bit of work right there, need a little bit of juice. Well, let's bring in the biggest talker in the history of the business, Paul Heyman, to help you along. Paul Heyman seems like the perfect fit for that possible area to fill out Bron Breakker's act and kickstart a new era for both Bron Breakker and the WWE Hall of Famer. Bron isn't going to be another Cesaro or Michael McGillicuddy. He's going to be a top guy for years to come. If WWE wants to speed up the process, which they likely will because he's so dominant, then having Paul Heyman by his side will certainly fast-track that process. Also, being a Paul Heyman guy will push Breakker to the next level of stardom, obviously. All that needs to happen for him along the way is to be paired with a long-time established name who gives him a little bit of those crafty tricks to get along. Perhaps we can see Heyman use his brains and influence to shoot yet another star to the World Championship glory level. When Heyman said he envisioned a future where Bron Breakker was headlining a WrestleMania, he knows a thing or two about headlining a WrestleMania. The man has been ringside for 7 WrestleManias in the last 9 years. Just imagine that. That's the importance he has without even being an in-ring performer. That's the kind of importance that can turn Bron Breakker into what he's destined to be, a main eventer and a world champion. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.